Hi, everyone. We are 1 minute past. Let's give people 1 or 2 more minutes to join, and then we can start. In the meantime, if there's anybody on the call who's not an editor and would like to take notes, that would be extremely useful. So please speak up, or else just say something on chat. All right, let's get rolling then. Hi, Mike. Are you saying you can take notes today? The agenda for today is an update from the core protocol editors for the next 40 minutes, followed by a session by Dimitri, who's on W3C VC, verifiable credentials, unless I got it wrong. And he'll be talking about a specific use case that came up in W3C VC and applies to GNAP and how it can be implemented or what changes are needed in GNAP to address it. Just one more heads up. We have a small dependency in the protocol on a draft from the SEC event working group, which has been effectively abandoned by the editors, by that draft's editors. We are working to get them back on track and actually push it across the finish line. If we are unsuccessful with that, we will want someone to volunteer to join that draft as a co-author. So please take a look, and if you're interested, please let me and Leif know. Again, before we start, we absolutely need a notes taker. That's one thing without which the meeting is not worth a lot. So please pick up if you can take notes on whatever medium. Yes, Justin.
So I just wanted to note that I had a meeting with Annabelle last Friday, and I did mention to her the SEC event subjects draft. So I'm also trying to poke her to get that over the finish line. I know she's been very busy with real day job stuff. But yes, hopefully that doesn't take too much to get it over the line. I've been keeping an eye on that as well.
All right. We'll see. Well, any of the editors could take notes.
I'm going to be presenting for the first part, so I can't. I can during Dimitri's presentation, though. So if Fabian or Aaron can take the first section, I can jump on afterwards to help.
Yes, no. Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Justin, and let's get going.
All right. Oh, no, that opens it up. I'm not sure how to share.
Well, let me try. No slides available. It's disappointing.
It says the new deck is being shared. Oh, no, it stopped.
We might have tried at the same time. Can you try again?
Maybe. All right, let me see. I'm asking to share the slides.
Just a sec. Yeah.
I got no slides available.
Okay, let me try then.
Okay. If not, I'll try to share from my desktop. Not ideal, but it'll work.
Just a sec. Now go. Yeah, please go from your desktop.
Yeah. All right. I've sent in a screen request. I think you need to approve that or something. Good thing identity and security is easy. Yes, I really want to share a screen. Oh man, which screen is which? This is always... Nope, not that one. You guys don't need to see my Spotify playlists, so here we are. Okay. All right.
We're good.
Excellent. Now where is it? New slideshow. Okay, I think we're good. And sorry, just let me get this set up. There we go. All right. So, hi everybody. Welcome to the GNAP interim meeting of 2022-01. I forgot to change the title slide. I got the date on the bottom right at least though. So this is the right presentation. I'm just lazy with my slide deck. So today we've got 4 main topics that we're going to be going through. Updates to the drafts, talk about sort of what our current process is, what the editors have been doing over the last few weeks since the last IETF, and what we're working on from there. The big topic today to talk about is going to be the IETF-113 Hackathon, which is going to be coming up at the end of March. So just ahead of IETF-113. We'll have a lot to talk about that. And then talking about kind of next steps and topics in the group, again, largely in prep for IETF 113. So in the core draft, we've made a lot of document changes that haven't actually resulted in any protocol changes. We have not published a new draft since the last IETF. The editors were looking at, a couple weeks ago, we were looking at what was in there and decided that it wasn't worth publishing a new draft, trying to get a new draft crammed through in time for people to be able to read it for ahead of this interim. But you can see the editor's copy up on GitHub. So if you go to the GitHub repository for the core draft and also for the RS draft, you can click through to have a live rendered version of whatever is on the current main branch in the repository. So yeah, what's changed here? We've got a bunch of new security considerations. These are things that we had talked about during the last meeting. So we've got stuff like the cuckoo token attack, which is a really interesting sort of multi-layered attack where you can convince a client to replay a token under some really, replay a key-bound token at that under some really sort of specific circumstances. Also some stuff about redirects and some bits about server-side request forgery and a few other things like that. All of those security considerations, though, have gone in with no real changes to the actual protocol. So these aren't necessarily things that are attacks against the protocol itself, but attacks against deployment choices that the protocol does allow. And a lot of these are just because it's going on the web, and so people are going to deploy it in a lot of different ways. So it's our responsibility and our job to tell people, like, hey, if you're using this, this is something that you need to look out for. The editors do plan on having at least one new draft in time for IETF 113. We think that there should be plenty of stuff in there by then, and more on that when I talk about sort of what we've been up to. But in the meantime, please go check out the editor's copy in GitHub, and also please continue to follow the pull requests. Whenever we have a new pull request that's not just a simple like typo fix kind of thing, we do try to let the list know and let people go poke at it and read it ahead of time before we merge it. All right, yeah, so these were the two security considerations that that I had just mentioned. Those are in there. There's some new ones that are pending merge right now. They'll probably be merged. I think they're actually due to be merged today also. There was one discussion that actually clarified the intent of two different parts of the protocol that we realized developers were looking at kind of similarly, because they do look kind of similar on the surface. I should ask, actually, are the slides coming through? Because in my preview, they're not. They're really kind of chopped up. Can people see what I'm presenting or no?
No, there's like stuff covering up the boxes.
Yeah, I mean, this is the only thing on this screen. Let me wonder if I can just get out of slideshow mode, if that's better.
That looks better. Nope.
Nope.
It looks like you have requesters that are going over it, and therefore
I do not.
The application is blocking them. But anyway,
Yeah,
continue on. We could always download the
I do not.
too. This
is the only app on this screen, so I have no idea why that's breaking so fantastically. So we'll try our best. I might just need to jump in and out of full screen for each slide, or just you guys can go look at the look at the PDF and follow along. All right. So anyway, we had two parts of the protocol that looked really similar, and they looked like there were two ways to do the same thing, namely the token rotation function, which is part of the token management API, and then the grant update function, which is part of the grant management API. In both of these, it looked like you could send a message and sign it and basically rotate the access token. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of right, because they were both similar to different parts of how OAuth 2 refresh tokens get used in the real world. But what the editors realized when we were looking at this and looking at the feedback, what's really going on in the protocol, what the protocol is actually allowing is that you're talking about two very different kinds of things with slightly different results. So the first of that is token rotation. So if you're going to the token management API, specifically for a single access token, the whole idea of this is to say, I want a brand new access token with all of the same rights. Give me something that is an exact copy of this, and throw away the old one if you can. The caveat here is that, of course, if you're using a structured stateless access token, then you're probably going to have some other considerations for trying to revoke this while it's in flight. There are methods to do that. All of that is outside the scope of GNAP Core. Possibly a topic for GNAP RS, but that's a separate discussion later on. The main point here, though, is that when the client is saying rotate a token, it's saying I want to replace this token that I am sending to you with something that does the same things just as well. A grant update, however, is saying that I want to get a brand new access token, possibly with new characteristics. I might be requesting something that's downscoped. I might be requesting something with more access rights. I might be trying to bind it to a different key, which is a whole branch we haven't quite figured out what that looks like yet. But the point is that I'm asking for something new. It doesn't necessarily affect the old tokens in the system. Now, an AS is free to get rid of all related access tokens when a grant is updated, and it may want to do that. And so that's some new text that we'll likely want to expand in the security considerations about grant updates and how they affect the system as a whole. But ultimately, what you're doing here is saying that in the context of this existing grant that you're allowing me to continually update, I want a brand new access token that does the kinds of things that I'm asking for this grant. So this is the main difference between these two functionalities. There is still a lot of overlap because a client that's dealing with an expired access token could choose to either rotate the existing expired one or go talk to the grant and get a brand new one instead. Right now we allow both of those. We might want to lock that behavior down more to simplify this choice. But functionally, from the AS and implementation perspective, it's a more clear, at least hopefully more clear, what's being intended by these two things. And again, this didn't end up having any real protocol changes, just our description of what the intent is for different parts of the protocol that were already there. And hopefully, as we continue to refine this kind of text, we can start to really lock this down and make it a very deterministic decision of, I'm here in the system, this is a thing that I need to do, or somebody made this specific request, what am I supposed to be able to do with that? Right. Okay, so the current process. The editors have started working through the issue backlog. There are still a lot of issues open, and oh, sorry, was there a...
Can I barge in with a question or do it at the end?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
So on token rotation, making sure that the semantics is actual revocation and the old token cannot be used is difficult in a cluster. We all know that. It's a typical problem. Now, the normal use case is I'm 5 minutes before the expiration of my token. I know that I will go and get a new one. We call it rotation, but I really don't. Nobody cares if the old token is still useful for the next 5 minutes. That's fine. And then there are very special cases where I may have logged out, changed my password, whatever. It's policy dependent, and I really, really want to revoke my token. So should we actually have two separate solutions or make it optional or actually think about this explicitly?
So token revocation is already a separate function of the token management API for that type of thing. And revocation is a signal to the AS to throw out the token because the client is done with it. So the question then becomes, do we want to have a special functionality that says, no, really, you must throw out this token and give me a new one in the at the same time? Like make that statement stronger. Is that am I hearing that that's what the question is?
So you sort of indicate that this is the intent to actually say that we have this semantics of the old token is gone.
Yes, that's the intent of token rotation. It's saying, get rid of this old one because I'm done with it, and give me a new one to replace it.
So what I'm saying is, for the normal use case, this is overshooting it.
Okay.
And yeah,
because of the revocation requirement?
Because if I want revocation, I have revocation. Yeah, because it's difficult to implement this semantics of the old token cannot be used.
So the editors talked about that. Fabian specifically has some strong opinions on token rotation and reuse and stuff like that. I'll let him chime in if he wants. But what we had kind of discussed here, though, was that to make it a shall if possible, and we have a new paragraph in security considerations that talks about why that might be difficult to do in a provable, why revocation as a whole might be difficult to do in a provable way in either a distributed system or in a system with structured tokens. So I think what's important is that it sets the expectation for what this action means, and the AS is going to try and do the best that it can with that. So if the AS is not able to actually revoke the token itself for whatever deployment reason necessary, then the client kind of doesn't care, because it's done its job. It's not expecting to be able to use that access token again once it's been rotated.
Well, the expectation is not only the clients, the expectation is of the person running the system. And they want to know whether revocation actually happens or not, whether it's guaranteed by the system or not. And I think by making the normal rotation into this very strong revocation, we're making everybody's lives harder.
Okay.
Denis?
Yes, I believe that revocation should be separated from token rotation, because in some cases it will be supported, in some cases it won't be supported. And if you do that separation, then token rotation is a creation of a new access token, and grant update is a creation of a new access token. So the two functions are similar. So if you have just, let us say, grant update and token revocation, then that you are solved.
Thank you, Denny. All right. Okay, I am going to see if this trick works to force the slide to update.
Yes.
Awesome, cool. Oh no, it broke again. Oh, it's because I accidentally changed slides. Okay, I think we're good. Sorry about this. All right. So right now the editors are working through the existing issue backlog. We've got a lot of stuff that kind of got sifted away right now for a while because of some, other larger discussions. But we've actually gone through all of the issues and have started talking about kind of what exactly we want to do about each of these as we go. It's slow, tedious progress because we want to make sure that when we come to the working group with a way to address these issues, we have something that is at least a plausible solution. Even if that solution is the editors think that this idea, shouldn't be implemented, or, and so we're proposing this just get closed. We want to be able to bring that back to the working group with our justification or rationale for doing that, in order to make sure that it's clear kind of where we're coming from, and so that the group can weigh in with consensus on that. We also, as always, welcome people to jump into the issue tracker if there is something that is being discussed that you think needs to be addressed, then do so. I will caveat say, please, if a decision has been made, please do not open duplicate issues, especially just because the group did not decide in a way that you agree with. This is why we are a working group. Not everybody's going to get their way. So, for example, just as a concrete example of that, the token rotation thing. So I realized earlier this week when I was working on my code, my own implementation of GNAP, that I had actually implemented a data model that doesn't quite actually fit with what the spec is now saying. But I will, as an implementer, bring that forward, change the code to update that. Regardless, you will see a series of pull requests and issue actions and stuff as the editors are still meeting regularly and still making progress on the core draft. And we are, in fact, focusing on the core draft right now. More about the RS draft in a few minutes. Because first, I want to point out that we are preparing for IETF-113, and specifically, we are preparing for the IETF-113 Hackathon. We believe, the editors and I believe that, and the chairs believe that the core protocol of GNAP is stable enough and has been stable enough recently for us to actually try and plug this whole thing together with multiple implementations talking to each other. So we have signed up and proposed a project for the IETF-113 Hackathon, which means that our plan is to be able to get together and plug stuff in, see what breaks. I've been working on making my Java implementation available so that it is deployable, so that people can go poke against an installation of that or set up their own installation if they want. I know Aaron's been working on some PHP stuff. There's a Python client, and Leif's group has a Python authorization server floating around. I don't know if that code's available yet. But the whole idea with this hackathon, with GNAP's take on this hackathon, is that, you know, this is a multi-party network protocol. We've got multiple different roles to play here. Let's try to bring them all together. And we want to try and go into this hackathon with enough implementations of different pieces of that as we can. So we've got a bunch of stuff, and hopefully we'll be able to collect more and bring that information to the list as we approach IETF 113. So really looking forward to that. It should be really good. In order for the hackathon to work, we have what we're calling the interoperability parameters. GNAP, as you guys all know, is a very wide-reaching protocol. It's got a lot of different ways that it can run. So what we're saying is that we are limiting the hackathon parameters to using a redirect start and finish mode for interaction, HTTP signatures, specifically with the RSA PSS SHA-512 algorithm and associated keys, and a content digest with SHA-512 as the proofing mechanism. And we are working on making available libraries and reference implementations in Java, Rust, Go, and Python for at least bits and pieces of the protocol for people to be able to build their own stuff on top of that. And if people have other stuff to bring in, that's great. Single key-bound access tokens, so we're not dealing with bearer tokens. We're not, because that part's easy. We're also not dealing with multiple access tokens right now because that part's a little bit harder. Arbitrary access rights, we're not looking to actually go into and filter all of the different resource access stuff that you'd be doing in a real system. And we're targeting dynamic clients and keys. So you just show up with a key and just start using it without having to pre-register things. With all of this in mind, we want to encourage people to use other parameters, other signature methods, other token methods, because we will have an incomplete matrix of feature of the other features covered. So if you bring your code that does other stuff in addition to these interoperability sort of baseline parameters, that's great. And the other reason for doing this is that this is hopefully going to, the hackathon will hopefully help us with our mandatory to implement discussion, which has been something that has long been simmering in the background of this working group that we do need to get to eventually. Let's see here. Not much else. Going forward, sorry, go ahead.
If people have implementations, want to raise awareness, want perhaps to get people to contribute and join them for the hackathon, what's the right venue to talk about all of this?
The GNAP mailing list. So I can start a thread. I'm just leaving myself a note to do that. Sorry, I have too many notes here. I've got to make sure I know what I'm talking about. I'll start a thread, and we can collect that there, and we can make that, since it's a publicly available mailing list, we can make that available to the hackathon community as well. There is a hackathon mailing list, and there will be announcements that go out to the general IETF about the projects in the hackathon as well. But I will start an implementations email thread, and people can chime in on that thread or just write to the list on your own. Another side effect of this hackathon is that we will have a listing of implementations in the spec, the draft spec itself. That's a section that we have yet to add during development, and the editors are hoping that we will actually be able to have both the MTI and implementation status sections as fallout from these activities at IETF 113.
Right.
Cool. So just resetting the screen here. Close enough. So going forward, these are not things that we're targeting right now, but these are something that we think will really, really help the community here, is development of a conformance test suite. There's the OpenID Foundation Conformance Suite, which is an open source Java-based conformance suite that's designed to test protocols like GNAP. It was originally designed for OAuth 2 profiles and is currently being used for a lot of OpenID Connect related stuff. There's a lot of really good features in there. So there's a lot of engineering work to make GNAP modules for that, but I personally think that's going to be a really useful thing when we can get there. We also would love to see support and extensions for OpenAPI and Async API and these other formal API description language systems that are out there, so that people that are developing an API can just say, oh, it's GNAP, here are the parameters for how to GNAP with this, and have that actually get published and work. So almost done. Next steps within the group. I'm just going to leave this here. There is a formal security analysis in progress, which has already brought to light a few security considerations and some really, really interesting attacks that the group didn't see on its own. So we definitely want to see that continue. And the goal is to actually automate that analysis and testing, as is my understanding. We need to continue to outreach to other communities. We have Dimitri presenting today on some work that's being done in W3C that may or may not have overlap with this, but it'll be really interesting to have that conversation. And of course, in addition to continued work on the core draft, we do need to get back to the resource service draft. It in fact did just expire. That doesn't mean that we forgot about it. It just means that we've been focused on the core draft for a bit now. There are a lot of good discussions that need to happen there. Things like token model, things like introduction of the RS to the AS in a dynamic way. Things like if you have an RS that speaks to multiple ASs, what are the ramifications for that, for trusting tokens and for dispatching requests? Things like if an RS wants to introduce new resource access sets, what does that look like? Which again plays into the token model. This is all stuff that isn't necessarily exposed to the client, at least as its role in the system. But it's stuff that's still important for deployments to be able to answer and do so in an interoperable way. And there will, of course, be a lot of unique security and privacy considerations in the RS draft as well. That'll be a lot of the text of that document, we believe. And that's all I had for the editor's update. So if there are any questions or comments, I don't see anyone in the queue.
No, and we're actually at time.
All right, I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Justin.
There we go. All right, thank you.
Dimitri, you're next.
I'm Dimitri Zagdulin, big fan of GNAP work, and so I wanted to come and talk with you all about some of the work that's being done in the W3C credentials community group, specifically the VC API task force. and specifically the interactive workflow, which was partly GNAP inspired. And I want to present the use case, which I think could be useful to GNAP, and I want to see if there's any alignment there, if we can meet that use case with GNAP, if we can start talking about interoperability between GNAP and VC API. So let's see, here's my link to the slides externally, and let's see, how do I present the slides okay, one sec. So no slides available. All right.
I think, Dimitri, I think you're going to have to just share your screen. Something went wrong with the slide import.
Yep, not a problem. Not a problem. I'll do that right now. So give me a second. Okay, so asking to share screen. Here we go. Okay, fabulous. Can everybody see slides?
Not yet, actually.
Oh, okay, right. One moment. Yep. Okay, here we go. 1 second. Permission denied by system.
Oh.
Give me just a second. Let me re-request real quick. Or sorry, not slides, but screen. Sorry, folks. It's giving me an error. Could I, Justin? Could I trouble you to share the slides, or can I invite everybody to click on the slides link that I just posted in chat?
Yeah. So I posted a link to the slides, and I'll try to share my own screen.
Thank you so much. There's not too many slides available.
Yeah.
Rather, yeah.
But let's get going.
Right. So, all right. So let's pull up slide number 2, use cases. So here's how this use case came up. In the verifiable credentials world, specifically in the education corner of verifiable credentials. So I'm one of the project leads for an open source digital credential wallets for universities. That's EduWallet by DCC. So one thing that came up is we had expiring credentials and we needed to refresh them. This is going to sound familiar to you with GNAP because there's the refreshing tokens part of the spec, and we'll talk about that in a second. So that was issue number 1. We needed to send an existing token plus some prerequisites, plus some additional credentials, and get back a new version of the credential for expiration. So that was the first use case. Second one was we needed to issue a credential, and the issuer, the AS, needed several prerequisites, including an OpenID Connect access token in order to issue that credential. So we did some research into the prior art. We looked at OIDC for verifiable presentations. We looked at SIOP. We looked at GNAP, as well as Diff's wacky presentation exchange, and DIDCOM. And at the time, there was none of the protocols that we looked at had the notion of, so obviously most of the protocols, including GNAP, have the notion of requesting access, whether it's an access to a resource or requesting the issuing of a credential. There's that. All the protocols have the notion of a request response. What I didn't see was a multi-step request, and then the issuer or the authorization server says, in order for me to fulfill the request, I need the following prerequisites. But I did I did see in the GNAP spec the interact and the continuation properties. The notion of, all right, so I the authorization server, received this request, and here's what you need. Here's what you need to give me in order for us to proceed here. So very much a continue or interact sort of thing. So let's move to the next slide. Right. So this is high level overview of what we're talking about. Client, I'd like to reissue a token. Issuer, authorization server, I need the old one. I need an OpenID Connect token, and maybe some other optional supporting credentials. The client submits those. The issuer, authorization server, grants access or issues the credential. Right. So very straightforward. You can see how this would be a fairly common workflow. So let's move on to the next slide. So as you're probably thinking, okay, so how can we handle this with GNAP? So we do have the notion of, we do have in GNAP spec the refreshing expired access token or rotating the access token. And Justin talked a bit about the difference between issuing a new one or refreshing an old one, so on earlier in this call. So we have this access token manage endpoint where the client knows how to get a new one, essentially. Similarly, in W3C verifiable credentials land, we have this notion that a credential has a property called refresh service that has a URL of the API endpoint where that token or that credential can be refreshed. But again, so one thing that I wanted to talk to you about today, and one thing that I think would be useful in GNAP, is the notion of, instead of just submitting the old token for a refresh, allowing for arbitrary other prerequisites. So let's let's look at a similar endpoint. At a similar use case that works in a very similar way as refreshing tokens, but again, it introduces this need for prerequisites. So next slide, please. Again, client requests to issue a token or a credential. Server gives the list of requirements, and an endpoint, a continue or an interact endpoint of where those prerequisites need to be submitted, and cycle. And so we're essentially looking at an arbitrary amount and an arbitrary number of request response cycles of perhaps the client submits the prerequisites and the client says, great, now that you've given me these, I need 2 more of the following. And the cycle continues. Next slide. So I wanted to take the conversation to the group. Can we use GNAP's interact properties and the continue properties to model perhaps the server responds with the inverse of a rich access request property, right? So can we model using the GNAP interact and continue properties and some other definition of prerequisites to fulfill reissue or issue with prerequisites or any sort of multi-step interactive workflow? So let's pause here, and I'd like to hear from the group. Firstly, if there's any questions in the framing of the problem, and I'd love to hear some thoughts on how to do this in GNAP.
Yes, Justin.
So first, thanks, Dimitri. This was a really great write-up, and this actually aligns really well with the token rotation discussion that I was talking about before. Because if you actually go back, Yaron, if you could go back, I think it's 2 slides when we start talking about the can we add prerequisites? Yeah, right there. Because what I think it actually fits a little bit better to, given our sort of clarified model here, the clarified semantics, is actually more of a grant update. So it's like, I want to be granted a new thing, but you're going to require a bunch of other stuff from me. Because at the grant level, that's where the whole interact system is really meant to kind of come into play. Because that's where you send if you're doing a redirect, that's where you send the interact hash. If you're doing something like in early versions, we had a stub for DIDCOM, encoded DIDCOM messages. Like that's where you would send the encoded DIDCOM message as just an encoded JSON parameter. So it's not exactly the same as rotating an access token. It's updating the grant, and what you're being issued is not an access token, but you're being issued something else. You're being issued a verifiable credential using, in this mental model, using GNAP as the kind of framing to that. And so my thought here is that from that stage forward, it actually really does make a lot of sense, and it does align with GNAP. Where things diverge, and I think that this is an important divergence, is how the whole process starts off. Because in GNAP, we have the sort of the simplifying presumption that in order for the client to start the GNAP protocol, it makes an HTTP post to a single URL for the purpose of getting access tokens and other stuff. And you're already like very much in the GNAP world. In the VC world, you have an existing API that is looking to kind of bootstrap its trust and its access rights. Or at least that's my understanding of where the bridge needs to come here. Because in the VC API world, if I make that request to the issuer and the issuer is fine with everything, it's just going to give me back the VC, and I'm not going to have to do anything else. I'm not going to have to consider anything else, right? So the question here, and I think that this is a really fascinating one for the group, for both working groups, is that is there a way, and does it make sense to allow an API like the VC API to kind of almost start a GNAP flow in the middle for its own purposes? And at that point, is that doing GNAP, or is it doing VC API security model that looks and feels a lot like GNAP? And I'm not sure what exactly the answer is for that, but that's that potential connection. That's why I wanted Dimitri to present to the group today, and to hopefully start a larger conversation about how these things might stick together. Dimitri, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too. It also looks like there's other people in the queue, so I'm gonna shut up now.
Yeah, but
thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Justin. Yeah, great questions. I do really think that GNAP and VC API can be very complementary. So for one, VC API requires access tokens. It requires authorization for their issue and verify calls. And getting that authorization, getting those access tokens is out of band, and GNAP is one of the mechanisms that we look to for setting up that initial bootstrapping. But more importantly, I would love to hear from the group and from you, Justin, whether there's intention from the GNAP community to also use it as a VC issue or verify, less so verify, but let's say to issue credentials in the verifiable credential sense, not in the OAuth2 sense. That's it.
Adrian?
Hear me? I would try to frame this question in terms of delegation, if at all possible, because that is the intent, and it is also the issue from a human rights perspective that I've tried to raise in some of the W3C context, particularly the VC API. And I don't know if that's a clarifying thing or if it's a confusing thing, but if we introduced, because you have an authentication component, you call it right, you have an authentication component to the flow you described. The question becomes sort of by intent, are we going to allow delegation as part of this process? Thank you.
Justin?
I just wanted to respond really quick to Dimitri's question about whether GNAP could be used for issuing VCs. One of the things that has been talked about from the very beginning is that OpenID Connect taught us that delegation protocols like OAuth can be used to issue things in addition to or beside access tokens. I see absolutely no reason why you wouldn't potentially, in cases, want to also issue VCs. I also see a lot of use for potentially the AS accepting VCs as part of this negotiation. So it's telling the client, I need a VC that proves the following 12 things. You know, send it to me however you want. Like that type of flexibility was intentionally built into GNAP's interact model. Like there's the very, very good reason why the start method is a list, and that list of items can be potentially parameterized. Like we want people to be able to say, like, you know, you could go to a web page, or you could send me this message, or you can just prove this crypto problem, or whatever other types of things people want to come up with. That is a really important extension point. So to me, it makes a lot of sense for that to be able to go back and forth. I don't speak for the group, but I would not expect this group to do the definitions of how VCs fit to GNAP. That seems a better fit for the VC community, because the heavier lift is going to be on that side to make sure that the VCs, all of the normative language around processing and issuing the VCs is followed appropriately. But that's not to say that, you know, as Dimitri and I both know, and Adrian as well, there aren't a lot of people that are in both of these communities that would be interested in seeing how those fit together. But GNAP, as it stands right now, already has mechanisms for direct issuance of what we call subject information, which per our charter, we're limiting to identifiers and assertions. You could tilt your head and call a VC an assertion, or you could define another thing that could come back its own data category, and handle that in its own way. Either way, GNAP could handle it being extended in that way, in my view.
So we are at time, so unfortunately I have to cut this discussion. Dimitri, I hope you got at least the start of what you were looking for, and let's continue this discussion on the mailing list.
Very much so. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, editors, for the great work you're doing. Everybody, have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.